in the moonshiner for money's a year, and I spent all me money on whiskey and beer. I'll go to some hollow and I'll set up me still, and I'll make you
Hello and welcome to St. Patrick's Day in the Valley. It's a look back at the historical highlights of the wearing of the green every March 17th, right here in the Mahoning Valley. I'm your host, Casey Malone, and we're going to look back at the St. Patrick's Day celebrations in the Valley. As you know, 2020's St. Patrick's Day Parade was one of the first large events in the Mahoning Valley to fall victim to the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's hard to believe, but 2021's Mahoning Valley St. Patrick Parade was again canceled. And celebrating in your favorite pub is going to be on a much smaller scale. Let's take a look back at the history of the Irish in the Valley and how the St. Patrick's Day Parade came to be an annual event. Join me for this special presentation via Zoom. We are going to join former Valley radio personality and the founder of the annual St. Patrick's Day Parade, Pete Gabriel. But first, let's find out more about St. Patrick and why the Irish celebrate his feast day. Joining us from St. Patrick's Church on Oak Hill Avenue in Youngstown is Joan Lawson, consultant for religious education at the Diocese of Youngstown. Joan, what can you tell us about St. Patrick and why we celebrate every March 17th?
We know more about St. Patrick than we know about a lot of people who lived in the 400s, but maybe we don't know as much as we'd like. But we know that he was taken captive from Britain, taken to Ireland when he was 16, and that in captivity he was a shepherd. And he was lonely on the hillsides by himself, a lot of time to think and a lot of time to pray. So he prayed and got closer and closer to God. And so in a dream or a vision, he heard a voice tell him that it was time to escape, which he did after about 6 or so years in captivity. And then he heard in the course of subsequent years that he needed to study, become a priest, become a bishop, and that he needed to go back to Ireland and walk among the people of Ireland, which he did. We know that he must have been a great teacher, and it may not be necessarily true that he used a shamrock to explain the Trinity to people, but that story says he was a great teacher and he taught memorably. We know for sure he didn't drive the snakes out of Ireland, but that story is told to say he had a forceful personality. And so after his death, the people who had encountered him, the people who knew him, would have claimed him a saint. And so his memory got passed through the centuries in Ireland, and it came to be that the day of his death, which is his feast day, would have been commemorated with religious observance and maybe a party, maybe some festivities.
So when did the parades become part of the festivities?
So the idea of parades seems to be more coming from people who left Ireland and came to America. And they go all the way back. Apparently, this was just found a few years ago to the earliest 17th century in Florida. And on March 17th, they had an observance, even a kind of a parade to honor St. Patrick. But then we see much later in the 18th century, in the mid-1700s in Boston, there would have been those who had left Ireland and came to Massachusetts who observed St. Patrick's Day with a parade, and in New York in the 1760s. It wasn't as huge a parade with floats as we would see today.
So the idea of parades on St. Patrick's Day is an American tradition. Thanks, Joan. On St. Patrick's Day in the Valley, everyone is Irish. But did you know the very first Irishman in the Valley was here before Youngstown was founded?
Hear me, Ori, Ori, we're working on the railway. In 1845, when Donald O'Connor was alive in Kansas City.
The best prophet of the future is the past. As important as it is to collect and preserve artifacts, how stories are told will shape their understanding for generations to come. Mahoning Valley Historical Society shares our local history through exhibits, programs, online platforms, and live events throughout the year. Being a valued resource to local news media further extends our educational support. Visit us online at mahoninghistory.org to see why teaching Mahoning Valley history is our pledge to you.
Well, here I am from Paddy's land, a land of high renown. I broke the hearts of all the girls for miles from Katytown. And when they hear the...
Now joining us to explain Irish immigration in the Valley is Bill Lawson, Executive Director of the Mahoning Valley Historical Society, and he's also Grand Marshal for the Mahoning Valley St. Patrick Parade, hopefully in 2022, since the last 2 years have been put on hold. When did the Irish move to the Mahoning Valley, and what brought them here?
Irish roots are deep here for a number of reasons. And it really goes back to what was happening in Ireland in the 18th and 19th centuries, which really a bad time for a lot of people on the Emerald Isle. And in the 18th century, the biggest issue was the penal laws passed by Great Britain, which basically forbid people from worshiping anywhere other than the Church of Ireland, which was an extension of the Church of England. And so that included, obviously, Roman Catholics, but also other people in Ireland who were Protestant. Majority of people who came from Ireland to North America and the American colonies were Protestant in the 18th century, though there were some Catholics. One notable one being Daniel Sheehai, who plays a big role in the early development of Youngstown. Daniel Sheehai was born in County Tipperary in 1759. In his formative years in the 1770s, there was a lot of crackdown, and two of his own relatives, a man named Edward Sheehai and also Father Nicholas Sheehai, were arrested. They had been very vocal proponents for the poor and the Catholic, and they were arrested, put up to some trumped-up charges, and both were executed by hanging right around 1776. Now at that point, Daniel would have been 17 years old, left Ireland, came here to the East Coast. He served in the Continental Army during the American Revolutions, and then fast forward 20 years to 1796, he became acquainted with John Young, who was going to buy a township in the Connecticut Western Reserve and develop it and make money. And from what we understand, Sheehai came with the original surveying party in 1796. John Young didn't make his purchase until January of 1797, and then he started selling land the following summer. And Sheehai bought 400 acres north of the Mahoning River in what we now call the east side of Youngstown, where Sheehai Street is today, and there he and his new wife, Jane McLean Sheehai, they set up their farm and had a whole bunch of children, and the Sheehai family really was, as I said, in the early development of Youngstown, they were key players. Here at Tyler History Center, we have some stories about the Sheehai family, illustration of what their first cabin would have looked like, a deed copy there, and just some wonderful artifacts directly related to Daniel Sheehai, the original, including the door key to his cabin and a leather purse and eyeglasses. The Irish migration of the 19th century was even larger than the 18th century, and because of the Great Famine in the 1840s up to 1850, it was predominantly Catholic, coming from the South and escaping just abject poverty and starvation, literally coming here to start over again. And so Youngstown and the Mahoning Valley benefited a great deal from people eventually coming to the United States and then migrating across the mountains and into Ohio and into Youngstown to work the jobs, coal mining, the iron mills. Some were farmers, anything we needed to do, just general laborers, building the community here in the mid-19th century.
Well, that is very interesting. Thank you, Bill. Did you know St. Patrick's Day is a public holiday in the Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland, in 2 Canadian provinces, and 1 Caribbean island? It's now celebrated in many, many countries around the world. Well, so far we have learned who St. Patrick was and how we came to celebrate his day, and we found out that parades for him were started right here in America. The very first St. Patrick's Day parade in Youngstown took place in the early 1900s, and there wasn't another one until 1948, according to the Youngstown Vindicator Archives. According to the newspaper, nearly 1,000 people, mostly wearing green, turned out in 1948 to watch the Ursuline High School band and Irish step dancers parade down West Federal Street. It took another 31 years before the parade became an annual event here in the Valley.
Oh, my name is McNamara, I'm the leader of the band. Although we're few in number, we're the finest in the land. We play at wakes and weddings and at every fancy ball. And when we play for funerals...
So we are now joined by the man who began the now annual St. Patrick's Day Parade, the legendary former radio personality Pete Gabriel. Pete, thank you for joining us. Tell us about the events which led you to start the March 17th, 1979 parade.
Hey, Casey, hi, and happy St. Patrick's Day. And I was kind of like playing around with some ideas while I was on the air. I had been here about a year. And following the 7:30 news in the morning, John Nagy and I always had a little bit of a chit-chat. And I asked him, I said, is there a St. Patrick's Day parade? And John said, not to the best of his knowledge. So I said, okay, let's do it. And I talked about the number, and all you had to do was give us a call, and we would put a St. Patrick's Day parade together. And if you didn't call me, and if there was nobody there, I would march by myself, but we were going to have a parade. As soon as I said that, the phone rang, and it was Gold Cross Limousine, offering me a limousine to use during the parade and all the activities before the parade and afterwards and so on. So now we got to start. The next very same moment, right after he hung up, there was a call from the Cheney High School marching band, and the director said, we'll be there. So now I had a marching band, a limousine, and a parade. And I put the phone number out again and continued to do that from the 25th of January until the 17th of March. And we had a parade ready for St. Patrick's Day.
Pete, what were some of the challenges you faced in organizing the very first parade?
First, I had to know how to organize a parade, which I didn't know much about. Then I had to get some Irish involved in it, because if I'm going to have an Irish parade, you got to have the Irish community there.
Working on the railway. In 1842, I left the old land for the new. That's just the luck that brought me through to work upon the railway. Tirami ori ori, tirami ori.
It was a real amateurish event on my part, because I didn't know what I was doing. But we were getting them. They were calling in every day. There was another entry in the parade or two, from a marching band to a decorated garbage truck. I mean, we had all kinds of stuff. So I'll tell you what, it was a little hairy, but if it wasn't for the Irish community to be in there to help us, it may never have come off.
On St. Patrick's Day back in 1979, it was a beautiful day. The sun was shining and 5,000 people came to downtown Youngstown to watch. What are some of your favorite memories from that very first parade?
Well, the first thing is that the weather was perfect for the parade. 9 o'clock in the morning was what time we stepped off. So we were gathering a little bit early. It was just one of those kind of days where the excitement, the anticipation, wondering were we going to have a crowd along the parade route, the units in the proper order, was the parade going to really happen? Were they all going to show up? Almost everybody who had said they were going to be there was there. And when we started marching down the street and saw the crowd, I was flying on a cloud.
The second parade was held on March 17, 1980 in Youngstown, and it was a cold and rainy day that year. How did this affect that parade?
Well, of course, the crowd was diminished. In fact, some of the parade too, for that matter, when you get a chilly, rainy, drizzly kind of day, there are some that aren't going to march, and there are a heck of a lot of people that aren't coming out. It's too bad we didn't have this kind of service for them, so that we could have at least brought the parade to them virtually.
Pete, each year you had special entries added into the parade. How did you get the elephants in 1980?
One of the things about the second parade was that we had gotten in touch with the people with the Otmarai Grotto Circus. We were hoping to get maybe a whole contingent, but all they did was send 2 elephants. Now, elephants in a St. Patrick's Day parade, I don't know how that fit, but we were there by fire station number 1. The firemen kind of felt a little sorry for these animals out there in the chilly day and the rain and drizzle. So they invited them into the fire station to kind of keep them out of the weather. Well, I had hired some guy with a wheelbarrow and a shovel to follow the elephants through the parade to clean up. Here are the elephants now in the firehouse, and they let loose. They decided this was a great place to go to the bathroom, and they flooded the firehouse with, well, let's not get into that detail. But the point is, you can imagine what it had to look like and smell like. The parade started. The elephants got in the parade, in the lineup, went through the whole parade. The guy with the wheelbarrow followed along. I gave him $50 and he didn't do a thing.
Now that is a funny story. Were there any special acts or celebrities that joined in the festivities over the years that really stand out to you?
I remember we brought in Jess Walton from The Young and the Restless. Now what we did was, as soon as we picked her at the airport, we brought her to town and went out to dinner. And we were sitting, and I knew we were home now, because as we sat to dinner, somebody sent over a bottle of Dom Perignon. Now that I understand is supposed to be a relatively expensive champagne. Now, if it's not, I still enjoyed it. I know she did. And for the entire time that she was there, she was treated like a princess. If she was coming to our town, she was going to remember she was here for the Youngstown St. Patrick's Day Parade.
And let's not forget about our local celebrities. Over the years, we've honored Ray Boom Boom Mancini as Grand Marshal, Kelly Pavlik, and we've even had Jim Rooney from the Pittsburgh Steeler family come in and serve as Grand Marshal. Weather obviously plays a large role each year in the crowd turnout, with some years hitting 40,000 people or more. Were there some memorable weather events that really stand out?
The one time when we had a snow and the township, we were in Boardman marching then, and the township manager had the street department take their water truck, fill it with water and food dye, green food dye, and go along the entire parade route and dye the snow green. I mean, the whole parade route, as people showed up for the parade, here was green snow waiting for them for St. Patrick's Day. And that was one of the most memorable moments, because more people have stopped me and said, oh, I remember the green snow.
I also remember the blizzard of '93. That year, we had to cancel the parade and hold it a week later. Pete, you organized and ran the St. Patrick's Day Parade for 15 years. From 1979 through 1994, what were some of the challenges you faced organizing an annual parade?
You know as well as I do, Casey, that putting this parade on is a real challenge. I mean, there's all kinds of things. First, you got to go out and find the units and contact this one and that one and that one and see if they're available and if they were interested. It's amazing how many people think that the bands and a lot of the units come for free. The real marching units, even the clown units, the bands, the bagpipers, the drill teams and all that, most of those require transportation and possibly a little help for their organization. And so they charge a fee. And that's why the post-parade party and the sponsorships for the divisions and stuff like that are so important for the community to have the parade.
And of course, lining up the volunteers. We need a lot of marshals and we need a lot of feet on the ground on parade day. And we're always looking for people that want to be involved. It's one day a year, but it is a long day, and we cannot guarantee what the weather will be.
Leave me alone. I'll eat when I'm hungry and I drink when I'm dry. And if moonshine don't kill me, I'll live till I die. I'll go to some hollow in this country. 10 gallons.
After all the work and dedication to the St. Patrick's Day Parade, what does it mean to you personally? And what are your wishes for the parade going forward?
So many people have embraced it over the years, including now. I mean, we're talking over 40 years that this idea on the 25th of January in 1979 is still going strong because of you and the organization that started back when I was still with the parade. And that organization maintained it, continued it, does it year after year. And when I hear about it and see it and experience the fact that it's there, and on the 40th parade, I was the Grand Marshal, and I appreciate that so much to have been involved in that. All I can tell you is I hope that for 1,000 years more, we will have the Walking of the Irish on St. Patrick's Day in Youngstown and the Mahoning Valley. And I get kind of choked up over it.
Tennessee toodles the flute and the music is something grand. A credit to old Ireland is McNamara's band.
Erin Go Bragh, whatever that means, because I'm a Greek, not an Irishman. But for all of the Irish who are Irish and all of those who are always Irish on St. Patrick's Day, may you have a wonderful St. Patrick's Day.
Pete, thank you for starting this wonderful tradition, and thank you for sharing your memories with us. My dad, Vince Gilmartin, was very proud of his Irish heritage. My grandparents were born in Ireland and immigrated to Youngstown, where they met, married, and raised a family. Here is a picture of himself from the very first parade back in 1979. He was the MC of the parade for many years and then got me involved. Now I serve as the parade MC and president. Each year, the parade committee strives to entertain and promote our community. We have had flyovers from the air base to start off the parade, and we try to get as many marching bands and pipe bands as possible. One of my favorite memories was getting the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. I even got to ride in it. The parade is a great family event and one that the Valley embraces enthusiastically each and every year. And I want to thank the parade committee for their hard work and our generous sponsors that make it possible. And of course, to our spectators. God willing, we will have a parade March 13th, 2022. Thank you for watching. Have a very happy St. Patrick's Day. Sláinte.
The ocean waves do roll.
and the stormy winds do blow. Yes, they do. And we poor sailors are skipping at the top, while the landlubbers lie down below, below, below. While the landlubbers lie down below. Well, up stepped the cook of our gallant ship, and the dirty old butcher was he. You take the high road, and I'll take the low road, and I'll be in Scotland before you, but me and my true.
Without archives, many stories of real people would be lost, and along with those stories, vital clues that allow us to reflect and interpret our lives today. We have seen prosperity and hardship, cultural shifts and time-honored rituals, benevolent citizens and dubious characters. For the past 145 years, Mahoning Valley Historical Society has built an invaluable archive of our people and their stories. Our collections have been a rich resource for all who search for clues and connections to our community's history. Visit us online at mahoninghistory.org to see why collecting Mahoning Valley history is our pledge to you.